The silent cry of a mother. Elena sat by the window, gazing out at the rain-soaked streets of her small village. The droplets tapped against the glass in a rhythmic lullaby, but there was no comfort to be found in the sound. Her mind wandered back to a time when her life was filled with laughter and joy, a time before the illness took hold of her son, Daniel. Daniel had always been a bright and energetic boy. His laughter was infectious, and his curiosity knew no bounds. Elena would often find him in the garden, examining insects or trying to climb the old oak tree, but those days felt like a distant memory now. It had been 2 years since Daniel was diagnosed with a rare and debilitating illness. The doctors in their village were baffled, and the nearest city hospital was miles away, beyond their financial reach. Elena's husband, Marco, worked tirelessly at the local mill, but the wages were barely enough to cover their basic needs, let alone the mounting medical bills. Elena had taken up sewing and mending clothes for their neighbors to bring in a little extra money, but it was never enough. Every penny they saved went towards Daniel's medication, but even that seemed like a drop in the ocean compared to what he needed. The once vibrant child now lay bedridden, his body frail and his spirit dampened. The illness had taken a toll on him, leaving him too weak to move or speak much. Elena spent her days caring for him, feeding him, and administering his medications. She read him stories and sang him lullabies, trying to bring a spark of joy to his weary eyes. But it was hard to keep hope alive when every day seemed darker than the last. Elena's heart ached with a helplessness that she had never known before. She felt trapped in a cycle of despair, unable to provide her son with the care he desperately needed. She had tried everything, borrowing money, seeking help from charities, and even praying for a miracle. But each door she knocked on seemed to close in her face. The world felt indifferent to her suffering, and she couldn't understand why such a burden had been placed on her family. One evening, as the rain continued to pour outside, Elena sat by Daniel's bedside, holding his hand. His eyes, once so full of life, were now dull and distant. She whispered a prayer, tears streaming down her face, pleading for some divine intervention. She had always been a woman of faith, but the trials she faced had shaken her beliefs to their core. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Elena wiped her tears and hurried to answer it, hoping for some good news. Standing in the doorway was Mrs. Ramirez, an elderly woman from the village. She was known for her wisdom and kindness, and Elena had often sought her counsel in the past. "Elena, my dear, Mrs. Ramirez said, her voice gentle yet firm, I heard about Daniel's condition, and I want to help. There is a clinic in the city that specializes in rare illnesses. I have a friend who works there, and she might be able to pull some strings to get Daniel admitted." Elena's heart skipped a beat. "But we can't afford it," she said, her voice trembling. "Leave that to me," Mrs. Ramirez replied. "I've spoken to some of the villagers, and we've managed to collect enough money to cover the initial expenses. It's not much, but it's a start." Elena was overwhelmed with gratitude. She hugged Mrs. Ramirez tightly, feeling a glimmer of hope for the first time in months. With the village's support and Mrs. Ramirez's connections, they managed to get Daniel admitted to the clinic. The doctors there were more experienced and had access to better resources. It was a long and arduous journey, filled with ups and downs, but slowly, Daniel began to show signs of improvement. The treatments were working, and his strength was gradually returning. Elena remained by his side throughout, her love and determination unwavering. She knew the road to recovery would be long, but she was ready to face it, armed with newfound hope and the support of her community. As Daniel's health improved, so did Elena's spirit. She no longer felt helpless, instead, she felt empowered by the love and kindness that surrounded her. The village had come together to help them in their darkest hour, and for that, she would be forever grateful. Years later, as Daniel ran around the garden once more, chasing butterflies and climbing trees, Elena sat by the window, watching him with tears of joy in her eyes. The rain still fell outside, but now, it was a reminder of the storm they had weathered and the strength they had found within themselves.